In today's ridiculously spontaneous video, because I literally had this idea like 11 seconds ago, I'm going to show you how the sodium glucose transporter works. Sodium glucose transporter, SG, sodium glucose, SGLT1. This is how your body absorbs glucose. So if you've just eaten, you're going to know my favorite candy, Australian licorice, or quinoa, or hummus, or sweet potato, or an apple, blueberries, or banana, or honey. Anything with glucose in it, this is how that glucose is absorbed. And the glucose from your candy is absorbed the exact same way your glucose from your sweet potato is absorbed. Because glucose is glucose no matter where it comes from. It's all getting absorbed via the SGLT1. It's all entering your bloodstream. It's all going to your liver. Your liver's deciding, what are we gonna do with this sugar? And it's all at some point gonna produce a blood sugar spike. Or if there's like a huge amount of sugar in your body already, like if you were going crazy on the Australian red licorice, then maybe your body's gonna decide there's so much sugar in our blood, let's turn some of this into glycogen and let's turn some of this into fat. Let's push it into fat cells and make new fat to store this energy. So sugar is sugar. Glucose is glucose no matter where it comes from. It's all getting absorbed the same way, and your body's pretty much making the same executive decisions on what it's gonna do with that glucose, and it's all gonna end up producing a blood sugar spike, or be used for energy, or be stored as fat, or be stored as glycogen. Here is how your body absorbs glucose. Let's start with eating the Australian red licorice candy. You put it in your mouth, you chew it up, yum, yum, yum. Salivary amylase might digest any starches that might exist in it, because one of the ingredients in licorice is cornstarch. So your salivary amylase is going to digest a little bit of those starches. Salivary amylase, if there are any starch molecules in that red licorice, and cornstarch is an ingredient in licorice, salivary amylase is going to initiate the digestion of those starches. This is the exact same case for potato chips. Inside of your saliva, salivary amylase is going to attack those starches and begin breaking them down into smaller molecules, or right away breaking them down into glucose, a monosaccharide. Now you swallow, it goes into your stomach, then your stomach lets it out into your small intestine. Now these little sugar molecules, or these partially digested starch molecules, are in your small intestine. Your pancreas is going to secrete digestive enzymes like pancreatic alpha-1,4 amylase, or like just other enzymes. And these enzymes are going to complete the digestion of the sugar and of the starches in that candy or in that sweet potato. So now it's in your small intestine, attack by all these digestive enzymes, and the end goal is to get single glucose units. You don't absorb starch, you absorb the breakdown product of starch, glucose. So starch is made up of a bunch of glucose units polymerized together. Basically, that means like chemically bonded together in a big long chain. Your body uses digestive enzymes to break all those down into the single individual glucose units. So in your small intestine, you've completed the digestion of the starch, and there was also already just a ton of single glucose units, simple sugars in that candy. All this glucose is hanging out in your small intestine. Your body needs to absorb that, because nutrition does not count. Calories do not count until it's actually absorbed into your blood. So right now, all this sugar is in your small intestine. It's kind of useless. Your body cannot use that as energy. It has to be in your blood and circulating to tissues, to your heart, to your liver, to your brain, to your muscles. That is when the nutrition counts. This is how your body actually accesses all that nutrition. This is how it gets absorbed. All absorption happens in your small intestine via the enterocytes. Your enterocytes are your gut cells. Like, these are the cells that make your gut cell wall. They are what absorb nutrients, absorb proteins, fats, vitamins, and they are like one of your first lines of defense against bacteria, toxins, pathogens, or undigested proteins from leaking into your body. So these enterocytes that form your gut cell wall and your absorptive surface are very, very important for health. One little example is in the case of leaky gut. If these are your enterocytes lining your gut cell wall, They are very, very tightly attached. You have these things called tight junctions, and that's what keeps your enterocytes super nice close together. In the case of leaky gut, or scientifically called increased gut membrane permeability, these enterocytes start to loosen, like the tight junctions become damaged, and this can be due to inflammation or like viral attacks or pathogens, but the integrity decreases and the enterocytes loosen apart. Now, instead of having this really nice barrier, you have a leaky wall. So before, in a healthy gut, the only way for things to get into your blood are through the enterocyte. Sugar passes through the enterocyte, proteins go through the enterocytes, fats, vitamins, minerals go through the enterocytes, and your enterocytes are not going to let in undigested proteins. They're not going to let in toxins, pathogens, bad bacteria, because why would they let that into your blood? Doesn't make sense. They will only let in vitamins, minerals, nutrition, water, things that your body wants and needs. In the case of leaky gut, bad bacteria, undigested proteins can leak in and they have free access to your blood. So now if you have these pathogens, bad bacteria, or undigested proteins leaking in through your leaky gut into your blood, the undigested proteins, this is gonna set off an immune response. It's gonna trigger your immune system and you might have an allergic reaction, increased inflammation, not feel good. If pathogens or bad bacteria leak in, huge increase in inflammation. It's gonna trigger your immune system and you might get really sick because now there's literally pathogenic bacteria circulating in your blood. That's the case of leaky gut. Back to sugar absorption. Let's do a high level overview. Sugar is gonna be this color. Inside your small intestine, there's sugar, 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 sugar. We have all this glucose inside the small intestine. And what we need to do is to get it into your blood so your body can actually use it. What SGLT1 does, sodium glucose transporter 1 does, is it allows the glucose to enter your enterocyte by taxiing that glucose onto the inwards movement of sodium. That sounds so complicated. Basically, glucose is not going to move in by himself. We have to use sodium to escort glucose in. So SGLT1 moves 2 sodiums in and glucose hitches a ride. So the SGLT1 is completely dependent on sodium being present. If there is no sodium present, SGLT1 will not work and glucose will not make its way in. Here is SGLT1. This brown circle is the transporter, and this Na+, glucose. So 2 sodiums go in, 1 glucose goes in. That is all SGLT does. It lets 2 sodiums bind to the receptor, 1 glucose binds to the receptor, and it says, okay, I'm gonna escort you guys into the enterocyte. Now we have glucose inside of the enterocyte. That is super, super awesome. Now the glucose is just going to passively diffuse into the blood. Now we have blood sugar, but there's one little complicated thing with the SGLT1 transporter. It is entirely dependent on sodium. And what it does is it couples the favorable movement of sodium into the cell to glucose. Sodium is entering the cell along its concentration gradient. So basically what that means is sodium's only gonna move into the cell if there is higher concentration of sodium outside than inside. So imagine rolling down a hill. Sodium's not gonna roll up a hill. That would be ridiculous. Sodium will roll down the hill along its concentration gradient. So SGLT1 is dependent on sodium, and it is dependent on there being more sodium in the small intestine than there is in the enterocyte. The small intestine is super crowded with sodium. The enterocyte has lots of space for sodium to just be free and relax and hang out. So it is favorable for all the sodium out here to want to move into the enterocyte. Here's where we encounter another problem. If all this sodium is coming into the enterocyte, well, this population is going to decrease and this population is going to increase until we hit an equilibrium. As soon as we hit an equilibrium, a balance between the sodium concentration outside and the sodium concentration inside, there is no more favorable movement of sodium inside. Our sodium glucose transporter will not work because there is no sodium wanting, like that's like sodium moving uphill. Sodium's not going to move uphill. That's not favorable. That requires energy. So as soon as we have this balance, equal concentrations, the sodium glucose transporter will not work, and that means that we will not be getting glucose in. So no matter how much glucose is out in the small intestine, if there is high sodium concentration in this cell, this doesn't work, glucose doesn't get in. What we need to do is have an escape hatch for the sodium. Every time SGLT1 functions, 2 sodiums come in, 1 glucose comes in, glucose sneaks out the back door. Well, each time we run this, more and more and more sodium ends up inside. We have to get that sodium out of the enterocyte such that we can keep on running the system. So what we use is the sodium potassium pump right here. There is and I'm going to use a different color. I lied, no, I'm not. What it does is it moves 3 sodiums out and 2 potassiums in. And this is your NIK ATPase. 3 sodiums out, 2 potassiums in. This requires ATP, so it uses energy. And what it does is it maintains the sodium concentration gradient. So let's just walk through this whole thing now. There is glucose in your small intestine because you ate sugar or sweet potato. And there's sodium in your small intestine because maybe you had salt on your sweet potato. SGLT1 grabs 2 sodiums and 1 glucose, and it allows the sodium and the glucose to enter the enterocyte. This will only happen when there is high sodium concentration here and low sodium concentration here. Now that we've ran the SGLT1 system, there's glucose in your enterocyte and there's sodium in your enterocyte. This is going to stop working as soon as sodium concentrations build up super, super high. Glucose in your cell, sodium in your cell. Glucose is going to diffuse into your blood, but we still have sodium in here. Now we're going to use this ATPase, the sodium potassium pump, to get that sodium out of your cell to keep the sodium in here low. This uses energy, 3 sodiums out, 2 potassiums in, and now the sodium concentration in here is low, sodium concentration over here is high, and we can run SGLT1 again and move glucose into your enterocyte again. That glucose is going to diffuse into your blood, and now you have a blood sugar spike or just elevated blood sugar. Yay! We did it! That's how SGLT1 works. In case you didn't realize, I didn't plan this video at all. This was entirely spontaneous, so I'm sorry if it was all over the place and didn't make any sense. I'm gonna work on making these videos better organized. And please, if you like this video, like, comment, subscribe. It just helps me put more time, energy, and resource into making these. And also comment your feedback so I can make these better. Okay, have a fantastic day, and I have free things, free little guides on my website, nutritionbyelsa.com, and see you all later. Goodbye.